Right, the crowd are on their feet now. This has to be one of the best performances we've seen of the year. Only in the dying minutes will we ever see anything as great as this ever again. Oh, and it's a goal!
All right, welcome to Nick's World of Football podcast. On today's episode, we have Sam Hickson, all the way from London, the UK. So thanks for being on the show, Sam. How are things over there? Is it cold?
Thank you for having me on the show. Really excited. It wasn't actually too bad today. I think it was 10 degrees and with some sun, which for us in February is actually pretty good. So didn't have to break out the gloves. But did have a jacket on. So kind of in the middle between cold and slightly less cold.
That's it. We always seem to ask questions about the weather when it comes to guests from the UK, and that's always the part of the course. So it's good to have you on. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show. And just tell me a little bit about yourself, what you studied, where you're from, and maybe your first role in events.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a very sporty household. My dad worked for Sky Sports and was the editor of the Sportsman back when I was young. So I always was surrounded by sport. My sort of uncle played cricket. The rest of my relatives played hockey. So I've always grown up around sport, specifically cricket and horse racing. And then the 2010 World Cup was a game changer for me. That's where I had my first sort of experience of football. And watching that, I was like, wow, I need to be a part of football. So that's when I started playing football and watching a lot more football as well. I was homeschooled all the way through from essentially when I started school until year 11. And then I knew I wanted to go to university after school. And so I went to a football academy for year 12. It was called FC 11. I did a diploma of sport development at the same time as training for football and gym and stuff like that. And with that diploma of sport development, I then went into university at the University of Western Sydney University. It was the University of Western Sydney when I first started. And I did a Bachelor of Business majoring in sports management and completed that in 3 years. And then went on to the University of Technology, Sydney, and did a Masters of Event Management, which I finished just before I moved over here back at the end of 2023. My first role, I guess, in sport was as a volunteer at Football New South Wales, and then into more of a casual role, just helping with their gala days for their SAP program. But my first real role in events was an internship at Bicycle New South Wales. I applied for it through FC 11, and they'd actually closed applications by the time I'd applied, but my boss at the role, Carlisle, had read my resume and was like, we need to get him on board, which was fantastic. So I did a 3-month stint at Bicycle New South Wales as an intern. I helped run the Spring Cycle, which was at the time the largest recreational bike ride in the Southern Hemisphere, I think. Hopefully my statistics are correct. And then I was put on as a casual worker. I did 2 to 3 days in the office. And that was a game changer for me. Carline, who was my boss, she was amazing. She did such a good job teaching me and showing me sort of, I guess, the basics of event management, which I think is what I needed at that time. And I think that's really formed the basis of my love for events from working at Bicycle New South Wales and being a part of that as well.
Wow, that's quite the journey, isn't it? And it's great to see how people have been homeschooled and can achieve their dreams and stuff, and that's incredible. So I hear that there was an internship at Western Sydney Wanderers. How did you get that job? Because that's interesting.
Yeah, so I got my internship. Actually, a funny story. My dad used to work next to the wife of the head of marketing communications at the Wanderers, at the Western Sydney University where my dad worked, and he was like chatting to her about internships and me and football, and she mentioned that her husband, who was Mark Jensen, was looking for an intern to help with like their fan zones and their matches, etc. And I was like, that'd be sick. I was a Wanderers fan at the time. I think I had only been a Wanderers fan for a year or two maybe, and it seemed like a really good place to sort of start in football. And so I went and got a coffee with Mark Jensen, and then I went and got a coffee with Natalie Gatt, who was going to be my boss, and just spoke to them and chatted through sort of my experience and what I've been doing and what I wanted to get out of the internship. And then started the internship in my last semester at university. So finished my time at Bicycle New South Wales and went straight into my internship at the Wanderers, which very quickly turned into a casual role, and then a part-time role, and then a full-time role, which was great to be a part of such a great club. As I know you are a Sydney FC fan, so I'm gonna say that or at Auckland, but yeah, exactly. Well, still one of the greatest clubs in Australia, I think.
Yeah, Auckland is, absolutely. Yeah, that's
at the moment.
At the moment, I was actually going to ask you, what do you think of Auckland FC's rise to the top and how they're performing? I mean, I'm assuming you are following the A League from the UK. Any thoughts on Auckland and how they're doing so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually on at a pretty good time here in the UK. Usually the Wanderers games are a bit later on in the day. So it's like 8 a.m. in the morning, which is quite good. I've been really impressed with Auckland. I think they're playing a really good brand of football. I think their recruitment, and I may be biased because their head of recruitment is Doug Cors, who used to work at Football Australia, and I worked really closely with him because he was the analyst for the Socceroos. But he and his team have recruited so well for Auckland, and I think they're following, at least from what I can see, sort of a Moneyball strategy, and I think it's really working for them. Doug keeps posting on his Instagram quotes from Moneyball, and I think it's really good to see new teams building a really good fan base and having getting wins. And I think it's really key. You don't want to see a team come into the league, get smashed, have no fans, and be really disappointing, and then that just continues. You want to see teams like Auckland who sell out their matches and have heaps of fans come along because they're being successful, and that then wins fans over to then, when it does become a bit more difficult in future years, they're already locked in, unfortunately sometimes, me saying that as a Manchester United fan, that you're locked into that team, and then you'll continue to support them even through the bad times. I think that's a really key thing for new teams that are coming into the league, to have that sort of baseline. I think Auckland's done that really, really well.
Yeah, and I think, my reason for supporting Auckland is because of the other flag here, the AFC Bournemouth flag, which I've been a fan since 1990. So obviously when Bill Foley, the owner of the Black Knights football group, bought Auckland and decided, created Auckland and decided to put a team there, I was on straight away. I'm thinking, there's no way I can't not support this team. So so and like you said, it's building the fan base, and for the times when there are harder times. And Auckland's had a pretty bad history of the Football Kings and then the New Zealand Knights, and they really haven't been very successful at all. So the third time around, let's see how this goes. I know, yes. Well, Bill actually in the presentation he said, if we win the championship, they'll get rings like the ice hockey players, and those rings are worth a fortune. So I'm thinking, I hope he's started the design process.
Yeah, exactly, because they're like
the way
8 points ahead.
Yeah, and they play the second team next weekend or so. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
We were third last time I checked. I think that was with teams behind us with a couple games in hand, but I'll hold on to whatever I can get as a Wanderers fan.
Yeah. Look, I like the A-League because it's not always the same teams. There seems to be a more level playing field when it comes to the A-League, and maybe obviously because of the salary cap system and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that makes it can be frustrating at times, but it also makes for a good league. And I think people just got to stick at it and support it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's good. So CommBank Stadium, what's that like from an operational point of view to work in?
Yeah, CommBank is my home. I spent like 3 years there, and then as my main stadium with the Wanderers, and then obviously at Football Australia ran a couple games at CommBank as well, including my first AFC match, which was a lot. But yeah, it's a sick stadium, and I think you can tell that it was built with an operational mind. Everything is like so perfect in terms of an amount of rooms. There's not too many rooms, but there's also like not enough. There's not enough rooms. Everything is kind of central to the tunnel to make sure that it's as quick and easy to get to. Then the furthest away from the tunnel is the photographer's room, which is perfect because you want that at the other end so they can access the back sides of the goals. There's an operational room that's within 10 meters of the tunnel. The tunnel club some people love and some people hate the tunnel club. I think it is a love-hate relationship. But I think it works its purpose, and if you can work with it really well, then fans really enjoy it. But it just makes sense as CommBank, and everything is on the I don't know my east, west, north, and south, but it's all on the same side of the stadium as the tunnel. So you're not trying to run around the entire length of the stadium to get to certain places. It's just really compact and just such a beautiful stadium. And I loved working there. I thought it was the best stadium in Australia.
I was going to say, so when you compare it to the Allianz Stadium, how is that?
Yeah, it's not. I'm not a fan of the Allianz Stadium from a operational point of view. From a fan point of view, fantastic stadium. I think it's one of the greats. You have such a good view from wherever you sit. There's really good corporate hospitality options, but operationally, it just lacks that sort of. I don't know. I just wish they had like an event manager for like football. And it may be, suited for other sports, I'm not sure. But for football specifically, it was just really difficult stadium to work with. Our ops room was up one end of the stadium. The referees room was in the warm-up tunnel of another team. You had to walk sort of half through their change room to get to the referees room. They had a tunnel club, which the stairs up to their seats was like you could literally like lean over and like slap the head coach as you walked up the stairs. We had to move all the benches, like all the people down one, so they couldn't get slapped by people. So it just did these little things that you're like, that could have been better. It would have made my life a whole lot easier from an operational point of view if you just change a couple things as well. Like the benches are raised by about this much, and so it just again makes it like a little bit difficult. The roof is like just too short, so like I'll whack my head when I walk up to it. So it's just like little things that I think could definitely be improved. And I also think I'm slightly biased because CommBank is just a great stadium and the home of the mighty Western Sydney Wanderers.
The mighty Western Sydney is the only Australian football club to ever win an Asian Champions League.
Exactly.
That's right.
That's
that's what that gold star's for, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, I remember going back to that, and I was amazed at how far, that they just kept going through the rounds and they got through to that final. And that was I'm not sure if it still is a 2-leg final, but back in 2014 or 15 or whenever it was, that 1-0 win
I think
at
it
home.
still is a 2-legged final.
Is it?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I may be wrong. I may just be lying to you, but I'm pretty sure it is a 2-legged one.
Were you Wanderers fan when they won that Asian Champions League?
So I'm gonna have to say no, but I have memories of watching the game, that 1-0 win. But I think I was just watching it because it was on TV. My dad had it on, and I just watched it. My earliest memory of the Wanderers, in terms of like going and being a fan, my dad took me to. It was the Western Sydney Wanderers versus Central Coast Mariners final game of the season, and the last regular season game at the old Pertex Stadium before it got knocked down.
Oh, yeah.
And we were sat sort of up the end nearest to the Wanderers active support, on the aisle. I remember this very clearly. And I do not remember a single kick of the ball on the field. All I remember is watching the RBB for 90 minutes being like, that's so sick. Like, I want to be a part of that. And I think that's where I fell in love with the Wanderers, was their active support and wanting to be a part of it, and how loud it was and how colorful it was and creative, etc. And I still remember standing on the aisle and a Mariners fan coming up and me waving goodbye to him as he left, because we were up like 2-0 in like the 85th minute. And I was like this, I don't know, 17-year-old, and I was like, bye, as they walked away. So that's kind of my earliest memory of like Wanderers, like fanhood, I guess, from my point of view. But I do remember watching previous Wanderers games. I just don't think I had that sort of connection with the club as I did post that Mariners game.
Sure. And I remember you saying once that you were sat next to someone at CommBank Stadium, and he had an app, and he says, "Watch this." So what was he doing? What was he about to do on his app? Do you remember the lights?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what were we doing? We were preparing for a match, and it was, I think it was the Australian Cup final between Sydney United and Macarthur, and we were trying to figure out what lights we wanted on the ring, like the shades around the top of the stadium. And he pulled out his phone. He just started like pressing buttons and lights changing on the app, and it was so sick that it was just app controlled, and you could literally just like pick and choose and combine different colors, and you could isolate different sides. So like Sydney United were the home team, so we put them on the like left hand side as you face the field from the tunnel. We put them up the top. Theirs on their half, and then the Macarthur lights, which were kind of boring because it was just black and white. For on their side, and literally just from an app, which was so sick to just watch how easy it was, because usually you're like, we have to ask in advance to program lights, etc. And this was like, no, just get the app out and press a couple buttons.
That's amazing. I guess that's part of the whole integrated stadium thing, that you can do that, which is just unbelievable. Because like you said, we all have this image of someone in a control room somewhere, having all these pre-programmed lights. So
I think that's the whole sort of preface when CommBank was built, was with their lights, was to be able to have that sort of flexibility. And that's why you see such really cool light shows when the Wanderers or the Eels play there, or the Socceroos and Matildas, because they have that functionality built in, that it makes it really easy to play with the lights and make light shows and stuff. And I think that's sort of the future for stadiums. A lot of stadiums are changing their lights now. You would have seen it at the Women's World Cup. They put a lot of money into changing the lights or upgrading the lights at all the stadiums to make sure they could do the light shows, because they did a light show at halftime of each match. So I definitely think it's the way of the future. If stadiums haven't already changed their lights to be able to do these kind of light shows, and then I think that's next for them is to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think I remember in 2009, because my Spanish football team was RCD Español de Barcelona, which is the other team, it's the main team of Barcelona. Then there's a smaller club called FC Barcelona, and we inaugurated a new stadium in 2009, and that came standard. Obviously, because of the brand new construction, and I think it was one of the only back then the only stadiums in Spain that had the ability, not just lights on the inside, but also lights on the outside. The ring of the stadium, they could change, and obviously when the team scores, then the outside of the stadium also glows and does all sorts of things. So yes, that's kind of standard nowadays. But that's really cool. You can control it from an app. So that's that's pretty cool. So you're having a great time at Western Sydney Wanderers. So your next step, what was that? You decided to move on.
Yeah, I was at a clinic. I was coaching these like school kids, and I got a message from Anne O'Dong, who I worked with for the African Cup of Nations, which we hold at the Wanderers football park. And she sent me this job, which was event coordinator at Football Australia. She said, apply for this job. I think it'd be really great. And I'll like put in a good word for you. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll apply. Why not? And so I put an application in, didn't hear anything from it for ages. And I was like, I haven't got the job. And then because it was right in the middle of COVID and all these like COVID issues and stuff. And then I got called into an interview with Eric Wu, who was going to be my boss. And essentially it was like, we're looking for someone that can run a match like tomorrow. Because we need to be able to hit the ground running as soon as the COVID restrictions lift. We've got AFC matches to run, etc. And I was like, well, lucky for you, I can run a match tomorrow if you need to, because obviously I was, the event manager for the A-League, women, and I was helping as the event coordinator for the men's team. And so, yeah, again, didn't hear for a month because of COVID and waiting to see what would happen with lockdown, etc. And then had the best birthday present ever. And the HR coordinator from FA rang me on my birthday and was like, you've got the job. It was an 18-month contract to start off with, and was the event coordinator for Football Australia for about 14 months-ish. And then got promoted to event manager on a permanent full-time contract, which was really exciting. So was there again for another about a year and a half as the event manager as well.
Right. Okay. So lots of it sounds great. So you, when you were promoted, were you also promoted to an assistant team manager role during the friendly match against Kuwait?
Yeah, so this wasn't planned. I flew over to Qatar with the Socceroos to help sort of run the match against Kuwait, which was a friendly game in the lead up to our two playoff matches, well, hopefully two playoff matches for the World Cup against the UAE and then Peru. And I got there and was helping to run the Kuwait match, and then the guy that was supposed to be the assistant team manager flew in and then had a family emergency. I had to fly back to Australia. And so I kind of got like honorarily promoted to assistant team manager for that window to help James Dasevsky, who was our team manager at the time, with everything related to the team essentially. So it was a really cool experience. I hadn't really sort of experienced a team manager role before. Obviously, I'd seen the work that he does and the work that Gina, who was our Matildas team manager, was doing, but I'd never actually got to see sort of like the behind the scenes and the team organization and what they do with their schedules, etc. And yeah, so I had a great time. I was pressing jerseys. I was hiding in the change room because I was too nervous to watch the penalty shootouts. It was a great time. I had a really good time, and I would love to. I'm currently working sort of casually with the FA as a team manager for their para teams, and I think one day I'd love to get back into the team manager space. I think it's a really fun, fast-paced environment to be in.
Yeah, and we'll get to that role at the FA soon,
bit.
And that's all right. I just wanted to say, so you were doing that role and also your event role at the same time. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my priority for the Kuwait match was to sort of help run it from our point of view. The Qatari FA gave a lot of resources, to us to help run the Kuwait match. So it wasn't that sort of hands-on or that busy for me because the Qatari FA pretty much ran the match by themselves. I kind of just oversaw it from an FA point of view to make sure that from our standards that it ran smoothly and that our broadcasters got the correct staff, our VIP tickets and the VIP sort of thing that we did. Because again, it was in the middle of, so not in the middle, but like towards the end of COVID. So a lot of COVID restrictions still. I had to sort out all the flags behind the goals and do all that kind of stuff, but then also help from a team manager point of view. So it wasn't too hands-on. So I was able to juggle it, but I think still it was a good experience to be able to sort of, try and multitask as best I could.
No, that's impressive. So you actually mentioned that you obviously made that jump from events coordinator to event manager. How did that promotion happen or go about?
Yeah, so I was working as the event coordinator for about 14 months, and I think it sort of helped my development because Eric Wu left quite soon after I joined to go join the Women's World Cup. So I had to really step up, and I got a lot of experience and a lot of exposure to things that I probably wouldn't have if I did have a senior manager there working with me. And so I was able to grow really quickly and progress really quickly. And then by the time we hired Despina Isaac, who was Eric's replacement, I worked really close with her, and we got a really close working relationship together. She was like a mum to me at Football Australia, which was really nice to work with people like that. And I kept saying to her that my contract was expiring soon. It was going to expire in about 4 months, and obviously 4 months is a long time, but also when you're looking for a job, it's also not a long time at all. And so I was quite open and honest with them. I was like, look, I'm going to have to start looking for a new job if I don't get some, security that I'm going to be kept on. And they were confident that they wanted to keep me on, and they were trying to work out how it works. So I kind of was like pressuring them a little bit, being like, I'm going to start applying for jobs if you don't offer me a contract soon. And thankfully, it was in Melbourne after a Socceroos game, I think it was, or maybe it was a Matildas match. And yeah, Desi rang me and said they would offer me a full-time contract. So I think it was just a lot to do with just hard work and wanting to learn as much as possible. And I think that's what really got me to that point, was instead of like sitting back and being like, I'm an event coordinator, so I should only do coordinator things, and like, don't stress me out with, event manager tasks or, senior manager tasks. It was, I want to learn as much as possible, and without people above me that can do the job, then I'm happy to step up. And I think that sort of really got me far along in my Football Australia job. So then when I became an event manager, my thought process didn't change, but I was already doing event manager stuff as an event coordinator. So it was not really a culture shock or anything. I kind of just like slid straight into that role and was able to smash that, and also take on more stuff because I already knew the event manager stuff from when I was the event coordinator.
Cool. So yes, so you're in Qatar. You played that friendly, and then you go. Well, you start to go. Well, obviously Australia's down to the last 2 games. Were they single games against UAE and Peru?
Yeah, they were single games. Yeah,
they were. Okay, so how do you prepare for games, such important games like that?
Well, if it was down to me, I'd probably just sit on the toilet nervously peeing for like 24 hours. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do it. But a lot of it is down to just not changing things. So when we landed in Qatar, they'd obviously done a training camp, I think, at Dubai, just like previous to that, because it was in the middle of, towards the end of the season, a lot of players hadn't played for a little bit, especially A-League players. And so they did a training camp at Dubai and then flew into Qatar. And I think that really did us well because it acclimatized us to the climate, and we were used to playing in very hot weather and also very used to playing in air-conditioned stadiums. We played a trial game against Kuwait at the same stadium that we were going to be playing these matches at. So we were really acclimatized to it, and we knew sort of what we needed to do, and we didn't change the schedule. We made sure that everything was there were no surprises. The players knew exactly what was happening. We tried to keep them in as much of a bubble as we could because we wanted them to focus on those matches. The FA did a great job. They brought in like Tim Cahill to speak to the players and motivate them and be like, this is what it takes to go to the World Cup. What they did as well, which I thought was really nice, was they made everyone stand up that had been to a World Cup before and kind of move to one side of the room, and then everyone that hadn't been to a World Cup before to sit on the other side of the room. And then Graham Arnold sort of picked on people that had been to a World Cup and was like, what was that feeling like? how did you feel playing in a World Cup? You know, what was your experience? And so I'm getting like goosebumps. And it was insane, like hearing players being like, it is the most incredible experience you'll ever experience playing in a World Cup. Like you that haven't experienced that, like you want to experience that because it's such a good experience. And I was sat there as like, just like a nobody being like, I want to go to World Cup. I want to be there. That sounds sick. And like he spoke to the kit man, Dom, who had been to like, what was it, 2022 World Cup. His first World Cup was the 2006 World Cup. And he'd been to every single World Cup since then. And speaking to his experience and, you know, the way that, you know, he viewed the World Cup as well. And I think that was a really good moment because, you know, people that have been to the World Cup was like, this, you want to be on this side of the room. And if we don't perform against, you know, the UAE, and we didn't know at the time, but Peru, like we won't be there. So this is a life and death, you know, situation for us. It's either we get to go to the World Cup or you get to watch them go to the World Cup. And so that preparation really prepared us. And I think you see, like you can read about Peru and how they flew in the night before into Qatar. They were really sort of lax and I wouldn't say unprepared, but like not prepared for the match as prepared as we were. And I think that's what set us apart. And that's what, you know, allowed us to win that game, along with some, you know, some crazy things from the Grey Wiggle. But I think them being so lax and, you know, flying in the night before and not really caring, being like, this will be easy. It's against Australia. Like, and us being, and we play the best as underdogs. I think that really made the difference. And as long as we got through the UAE, who we knew would be tough, and I stood in those change rooms for about 120 minutes, and I only came out when Aiden Rustic scored that deflected volley to make it 2-1 because I was so nervous. And I'm a nervous watcher of football because I can't affect the result, and if I can't affect the result, I stress. And so I literally stood in the change room for so long, not watching the game. And it also, there's so much riding on it because you lose, your flight is the next day. You're gone. You're out of there. You're back home to Australia. And I didn't want to go back because it was my first overseas trip. It was my first time on camp with the Socceroos. And I didn't want that to end, especially end in that way, because that would have been a really sad, depressing way to end. And thankfully, it ended in a really positive way. And we managed to beat Peru on penalties and got to run onto the pitch, you know, celebrate with the team and go home. That's me on the pitch after we won. We had the Give It 100 t-shirts, which on the back says back to back to back to back, because it was our like 4th World Cup in a row. And yeah, it was just an insane moment to be part of that, you know, Socceroos team. The winning penalty was scored. I ran onto the pitch. I think I jumped over our chef to try and get onto the pitch quicker. And then Matty Ryan. Yeah, we're like running down the stairs, and he's like a little bit shorter than me. So like I was on the top stair, and I've just jumped over him to get to.
So he said, "No soup for you."
Yeah, after he was like, I'm not feeding you again. And then like Matty Ryan, because obviously the referee said, "Don't run on the field yet until we've checked the VAR to make sure that you know Redmayne hadn't stepped off." We didn't care about it. As soon as it was saved, we were legging it onto the pitch, and Matty Ryan sort of like stopped, and I like careened into the back of Matty Ryan because just like blindly running onto the pitch to celebrate and be happy, and he's sort of been like, stop. So I've like careened to the back of him, and then they've like blown the final whistle. We all ran on, and you'll see there's a video online, and there's like a whole group of players jumping up and down, and you just see me run right across the screen because Awa Mobile, who I got really close with on camp, was like on the ground just past. So I've gone straight to him. But it's just this really funny moment because there's all these players like, jumping up and cheering. And then there's me just running straight across the pitch.
On the video, go, who's this guy? Is it a streaker?
Literally, it's like, we don't know who that person is.
Oh, man. Now, I heard a story of when you were on the pitch and Graham Arnold was talking, and you were talking to someone, and someone came over and spoke to you. What was that about?
Yeah. So was that the Matty Ryan one? Was that the Matty Ryan story?
I
I
think
told
so.
you.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
So I blame Dom, the kit man, for this. Dom told me to do a crossbar challenge to see if I could hit the crossbar with the football, which I did. I actually nailed the crossbar. But it was while Graham Arnold was like talking to the team, and we were off on the side. And Dom was like, "Hey, hit the crossbar." I was like, "Yeah, sure." Bang, hit the crossbar. I was like, "Oh, sick." And then I'm walking back, and Matty Ryan sort of pulled me aside and be like, "Don't do that ever again." And I was like, "Okay, Matty, no worries, Matty. Thank you, Matty." It was a very humbling experience, but it just shows the professionalism of the Socceroos and Matty Ryan being the captain to be like, "This is." This is not acceptable. And he didn't do it in a mean way. And obviously he knew that it was my first camp. And he just did it in a sort of like, almost like how a dad sort of, takes their child aside and goes, "Don't do that again. Please don't." It kind of felt like that. And I was like, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't feel hated. I felt stupid because I'd stupidly kicked a ball while Graham was speaking. But yeah, I got told off by Matty Ryan, who then punished me by pulling me up in front of the whole team and doing my initiation. So
payback. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Now you were a goalkeeper, weren't you? You used to play in goal.
I still do play in goal, although my shoulders and knees would say that I struggle. I've been a goalkeeper. I played in goals from a very young age because I was the youngest in my age group in terms of my friends. And so I was always forced into goal because I was the youngest. And so I just learned how to be a goalkeeper so I could stop the older boys from scoring against me. And then there's been a goalkeeper ever since. And so Matty Ryan obviously is one of my heroes, growing up and watching the Socceroos and being like, I want to be like Matty Ryan. And so to be there and be on camp and be able to speak to him and be around him was just an insane experience. And the same with Redmayne and Vukovic as well, to get sort of to watch them train and see the level of professionalism. It confirmed in my mind that I was never going to get there because there was no chance. I think I joined into one drill and I dropped the ball after like 2 seconds and I was like, "Yeah, that's me done, guys. Sorry." But yeah, it was a really, really cool experience.
Awesome. Now the night before the Peru game in Doha, I hear there was some how do I say this? Some dirty tricks or alleged dirty tricks by the opposition.
Dirty tricks, yeah.
Yes.
No confirmation.
No confirmation, but they are alleged. So what happened?
Weirdly, the fire alarm went off at about 4 a.m. in the morning, and so the whole hotel got evacuated down into the lobby and then outside, which at 4 o'clock in the morning is actually quite nice weather in Qatar in June, because usually throughout the day it's about 50 degrees. So it was quite balmy. But yeah, the fire alarm went off. I was tasked with the responsibility of making sure the CEO got out okay. So I woke with a start from this fire alarm because it was so deafening. And I've thrown on clothes and I've run up because he was the floor above me, run up to the floor above me, knocked on his door. He wasn't in there and I missed him because he was walking around one side of because the hotel was a circle. He was walking around one side and I'd come the other way and I spotted him across. So I ran back, made sure he was in. As we were walking down the stairs, I've looked down and all of my clothes are inside out because I just chucked them on. So I was great. I'm walking around with the CEO of Football Australia in my inside out clothes. And then managed to get down and it was obviously a false alarm. And so we all had to go back upstairs. But it was just a very annoying time. And they had fans outside as well and in the lobby trying to chat to players and get photos and just be annoying. And so we had to be really careful. And obviously we had our security guards as well that were helping. But it was just, some usual tactics from teams to try and distract and influence the opposition team to hopefully make a difference, which thankfully it didn't.
Yeah, and I think that there was another alleged thing that they tried to place a curse on the team or something, or on the goalkeeper.
Yeah, I heard we're walking around. I think it was with Jason Davis, one of the players that was injured. Walking around, we're speaking to some Peruvian people that had come up and spoken to us, and apparently, they had tried to put a curse on the Socceroos, similar to the curse that I think was put on way back when we couldn't qualify for World Cups. And they tried to put a curse on us as well to make it so they went through and we didn't. But Redmayne saw that curse was broken, which was great.
It's really broken in his true wiggle foot. I do remember watching him. It's like he's my favourite goalkeeper. Well, you say he plays for the wrong team, but hey, there you go. Can't have it all, I suppose.
To be fair, he wasn't great at the Wanderers, and he's really come out of his shell at Sydney FC. So it's great to see him playing well, at least, albeit for a blue team instead of a red and black.
There you go. So when the day of the match of that final, was it like 95% all Peruvian fans and just 5% or less Socceroos fans? I mean,
yeah,
it was heavily outnumbered, I think.
Yeah, I don't know the exact percentages, but we were definitely outnumbered. We kind of had the behind the goal, kind of the first bay was ours, and then above that we'd put some flags and stuff because we knew we wouldn't, sell those seats. But there were so many Peruvian fans, and you couldn't hear the Australian fans when you walked out. Like I walked out just after the teams walked out, and the Peruvian fans were just like so loud. They had all these flags in their fan. They had drums, etc. It was just your typical like South American fan base, and they'd all flown over. They were all there, and the feeling was that it was party time for them because they were going to the World Cup, and I think that made it even more sweeter when we won because they didn't stop singing the entire game, and it just felt like they were there to party with the team after the game, and then we put a stop to that, thankfully.
Wow, the airports would have been super busy the following week.
Yeah, absolutely. All these sad Peruvian, all these very happy Australians.
Very quiet airport, yeah. All right, so you qualified for the World Cup, and obviously we did incredibly well those 3 games in the group stage, and then we get to the round of, was it the round of 16? I think it was the round of 16.
Yeah, round of 16, yeah.
And of course we have the eventual World Cup champions, and again was it Quor that had that chance to equalize, to then hopefully take it to extra time or penalties, and I think we're all on the edge of our feet.
I've never felt a wider range of emotions in a shorter amount of time than when the ball broke for Guaranqual to have that shot, and then to see Martinez save it. I went like, and I just went head in my hand straight away, because that was the moment to equalize. We'd had a couple other chances, like since Goodwin scored that deflected goal. I think Bajic had a chance where he ran through like the whole team and it was only blocked on the line by an Argentinian player. We had the Guaranqual chance as well. I think we had another Goodwin chance. And it was so cruel because I just wanted to lose convincingly, because I just wanted to be like, you know what? We lost 4-0 like against France. We're never going to win it. Doesn't matter. Like Argentina are the best team. But to get so close and also concede goals that were just stupid goals to concede.
Oh yes, I remember. I'm not talking about that one because that was
it's just it's so frustrating because you were so close, and Argentina were quite vulnerable because obviously they'd lost to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's right.
And they weren't convincing in their other 2 group stages, and I think that was just our time to try and snatch it from them. Obviously, they were the eventual champions, which is great because we lost the eventual champions. There's nothing much you can do about that. But another me, and I think Aussie, the A-League memes posted an edited video where the ball went in, and I hate watching it. They reshare it every year.
That's cruel.
I hate watching it because it's so cruel watching it. So I'm like, that should have been it. It was a great game to be at.
Oh, I bet it was. And I think we had a similar fate in 2006 in Germany against Italy. Again, we lost with that Lucas Neal alleged penalty, and then Italy.
I work with an Italian at work, and I remind him at least weekly that they cheated us out of the 2006 World Cup.
I know, and again they became champions as well. So, mate, if you want to become World Cup champions, make sure you get Australia in the round of 16. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
So, so that comes to an end, obviously, and so you make your way back to Australia, and the following year we have the Women's World Cup. And did you know when you were coming back from the World Cup in 2022 to Australia that you were going to be involved with that? I mean, I guess that was a given, wasn't it? Because of your position.
Yeah, we kind of knew that we were going to be a part of it in some way, but we weren't sure what way we're going to be a part of it. Obviously, throughout the Men's World Cup, I was looking after the ticketing of operations from an Australian point of view for our team and players. And then during the round 16 for the general public as well. And FIFA were going to use the same ticketing platform for the Women's World Cup. And so that sort of led into me helping with the family and friends, and then also the ticketing ops from an Australian point of view for the Women's World Cup. Obviously, a way, way, way bigger operation. I think we sent out over 40,000 tickets across the tournament. And God bless FIFA, but their system was an Excel document where you had to put a first name and last name and an email address against every single ticket and upload it. And then if you wanted to add more tickets, you had to re-download it because you couldn't have a master sheet because then that would ruin the system. So it was a very complicated process, and I had some great people to help me. Amelia Connolly, who was the ticketing manager at the time, and Peter Ayub, who was also the other ticketing manager. They were super supportive and helped out a lot with the ticketing process as well. And then I ran the family and friends with Sarah McCarthy as well. So we knew that we were going to be involved, but in what way we weren't sure. And I think I was really lucky to be a part of the World Cup in such a massive way and a really impactful way, which was really exciting.
Yeah, and you say it was a much bigger operation than Qatar, obviously, because Qatar was taking care of their stuff. And but in that tournament, did you have to work with the New Zealand FA as well, or was it pretty much we take care of our venues here, and New Zealand takes care of theirs?
So Australia. So how the World Cup worked was I had a LOC, which was a local organising committee that ran the Australian one and also ran the New Zealand one that had like separate kind of LOCs for the Australian version and New Zealand version. And then Football Australia was kind of separate to that, as we just looked after Australia, like the team itself. And so my role was specifically around tickets for the Matildas and their staff. And then also I had the general public allocation for tickets for all of the Australian matches. I had some for the New Zealand matches, but not really, and we didn't really use them because not many people went to New Zealand to watch the games, and Australia didn't play in New Zealand as well. So I didn't really work that closely with the New Zealand FA. I met a couple of them when we did. I was on like a FIFA shadowing thing for a couple of days to just see like the behind the scenes of how a World Cup works. I got to meet a couple of them there, but in terms of like working with them, we kind of just worked directly with the LOC and then within our own sort of FA as well to distribute the tickets.
Cool. So knowing how you were in the dressing room against UAE, how did you tackle that Australia versus France penalty?
I stood on the concourse for I think the second half, and then I think it was the whole of the extra time. I stood on the concourse and I watched the TV, and I just paced back and forth. And I had Bekto, who was our HR coordinator, with me, and I couldn't watch it. And I was just like pacing back and forth, and I'd like peek up at the TV and then keep pacing and peek up at the TV. And it was so horrible. And then for the penalty shootout, I went back down to my seat, and I was with all the FA sort of staff, which was really nice. When we scored the winning penalty, and I know Courtney Vine personally from back when we were like high schoolers, and to see her, and I also knew her at the Wanderers as well, and then to see her perform at the Women's World Cup and to score the winning penalty was so special. Wow. And I broke down crying. I was like, and then I rang my mom, and I was like crying. I was like, "Mom, we did it!" And she's like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, "Because we did it."
Did what?
Exactly. Well, it was such a massive moment. such a massive moment for women's sport in Australia.
Yeah.
And you see all the videos that were happening around that game and like how it was on all the AFL screens in the concourse. AFL players were like in their change room watching it. You know, the Boomers were at the stadium watching it at their stadium, you know, watching the game and, you know, jumping up and cheering when Courtney Vine scored. And I think it was such a pivotal moment in women's sport in Australia, especially women's football, that, you know, there were so many doubters about the Matildas and, you know, we didn't have Sam Kerr and we didn't get off to a great start in the group stages. You know, we lost to Nigeria, I think it was. And
we only just beat Ireland 1-0.
And we only just beat Ireland, and we got to Canada, and I was like, we're not going to beat Canada. And then we did beat Canada. And then we scraped past Denmark with a Caitlin Ford goal, I think. And so it wasn't looking great. And I was like, we just needed that extra step. And I think that was such a great moment. And to have the whole nation sort of rally around the team and really get behind the team, I think that was really special to be a part of. And I think as well, it was nice because you know, our whole, you know, 6 months worth of work had gone into this, and to be able to see sort of us get to the, you know, semi-final and to make all that work worth it. You know, if we'd been knocked down the group stage, it'd be like 6 months of work, and it was, you know, almost wasted because we hadn't sort of fulfilled our potential. And I think being able to get to the, you know, the semi-final and then the third place playoff really showed our potential, and I think it made all that hard work worth it in the end. And I think that's what I was so excited about and passionate about as well. But I don't think my mum got it at the time.
No, that's right. It did unite the nation. I you know, I was in my workplace and everyone was supporting the World Cup. Everyone got given a team to follow, and there'll be groups of us following different teams and stuff. And exactly. It united the workplaces, I mean, as well. I mean, it's incredible. So, cool. So after that, you decided to go to the United Kingdom as between the Women's World Cup and a few months later, I suppose, was it? Was that to fulfill a dream, or like you had plans to go to England? And
I guess like I had a 10-year plan, which in it was going to the UK at some point. And I'd previously tried to move to the UK back at the end of 2019. And I had flights booked, I had a potential job lined up, and then COVID hit and my flights got cancelled. And I think that was a blessing in disguise, because I think I was going over there very inexperienced with no money. And I think this time I obviously had all the experience from the World Cups and my time at Football Australia. And I guess in a way it was sort of fulfilling a dream where I'd always wanted to move here at some point and to try my luck here at sport. I was lucky enough to come over here in October of I'm trying to mix up my years, 2023, to run 2 Socceroos matches, one at Wembley and one at the G-Tech. And I was able to experience the UK for the first time, and also was able to interview in person for a couple jobs, which meant that they were able to offer me a role before I had moved to the UK, which was crazy because I was still, living in Australia. I didn't even have flights booked. I was just applying for jobs and being like, I will book flights, and I promise I'll have a visa. I just need a job first before I can commit. And the University of West London Students' Union were amazingly sort of flexible, and it wasn't in sport, and I was really conflicted with whether I wanted to move to a job that wasn't in sport, but it was a blessing because I was able, it's a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday role. So when you're moving to a new country and you're trying to adjust to life in a new country, being able to have weekends off and nights off and, the flexibility to take leave and travel around Europe. Like I've been to 12 different European countries since I moved here at the start of 2024, where I can just like take a Friday off and go Friday to Sunday and pop to Albania or pop to, Germany or, Switzerland, etc. And I think that this first year of being in the UK and being able to have a job that was so flexible really it meant that I could settle down and build a life here in the UK without having to be stressed about, traveling for work. Like if I had to travel for work, I would have been so screwed trying to like organize my personal life and travel, etc. And I think that was a blessing that I don't think I saw when I moved here and took the role. I sort of moved here. I was like, well, I'm not going to stay here very long. I'm going to get another job in sport. And when I moved here and started working, I was like, actually, it's a really good work culture, but also it gives me the flexibility to able to, settle down. And also I met my girlfriend at that job too. So that also helped me, stay around a little bit longer too.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And of course, I'm about to show a picture of you at the Euros in Germany, and that happened in June, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. So this photo was taken just before the Euros. I went to Germany with my friend Chris Carulli to Marco Reus's last game for Borussia Dortmund, which was so sick. But they had all the Euro stuff ready to go. I actually did a stadium tour of. I think it was a stadium in Cologne, which was one of the Euro stadiums as well, to really get to see the behind the scenes of the Euros. And it was a really exciting time in Germany, and also a really exciting time here in the UK as well, because obviously England went almost the distance. I was very happy that England didn't win, because if I had to deal with gloating English fans at work, it would have been horrible. So I was very glad that Spain won. But it was a really exciting time to be in Europe and to be in Germany and the UK because of the Euros.
Yeah, and how did you, from an events manager point of view, how did the organisation of the tournament seem to you? Was it well run? I'm assuming being Germans were pretty spot on, but I just wanted
from
to know
all reports, like I knew a couple of people that had worked at the Euros, and from what I could see, from being around Germany at the time, and then also from watching them on TV, I think it all ran really smoothly. It looked like a successful tournament. It sounded like a successful tournament from the people that I spoke to, and I think like you said, it worked like clockwork. I think it helped because it was in Germany as well, but I think it was good because it took you to different parts of Germany, which I think was nice. It wasn't, based in one specific city and all the matches were there. And I think that really helped to sort of spread football around a bit in Germany. And, some of the smaller stadiums got a chance to host in international football as well. So, definitely from what I saw and heard, I think it was a really successful tournament. And like I said, I was very glad that Spain won.
Yeah, no, I think the first episode of this Next World of Football, which has been rebranded, but we were talking about the pre-match and then the post-match. Episode 1 and 2 were based on the Euros, so that was good time to start a podcast at least.
Yeah.
So you go back to England and so working for the West London Students' Union in events and stuff. But you also have quite a lot of volunteer positions or casuals, or you're doing quite a lot. And I think that's how important do you think it is to do volunteer work?
Yeah, my CEO jokes that I've like 48 roles around the UK at the moment, which I don't. I only have 3 paid roles and a volunteer role. It's actually 2 volunteer roles. I think it is really important to do volunteer work as long as it gives you experience that you haven't got before. At my age, and then further on, obviously, then you can volunteer and give back. But I think for me, the reason, like my 2 volunteer roles are the events director at the IFCPF, which is the International Federation for CP Football, and that for me is a little bit of a baby of mine because I've worked in CP football for a long time. I worked at within the CP football world at Football Australia, and then also in one of my casual roles, I'm one of the team managers for the English CP team as well. So being around CP football for so long is like a passion of mine. And so when this role came up, I literally saw it on Instagram. They posted being like, if you have experience in all these things, contact us. And one of them was event management. I was like, hey, I'm interested. Like, I have experience in event management. Here's my CV. And Ash, who's the CEO, reached out to me and started talking. And now I'm the event director, specifically working on the Euros. So trying to get the Euros to be sorted up at Loughborough this year in August. And so that's one volunteer role. And then I also have another volunteer role.
Just before you continue with that one, CP means what? Because there'll be people.
Cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it means like cerebral palsy, but also CP football. It also involves players that have stroke injuries as well, and like brain acquired injuries too. So don't necessarily have to have CP or cerebral palsy to play. You can also have brain acquired injuries and stroke injuries as well. But it all falls under the umbrella of CP football.
So how many teams would actually be participating in the CP Euros in Loughborough?
Yeah, so we're hoping between 8 and 12. So all sort of major European teams participating, and then in the men's tournament, and then the women's potentially four to six, depending on how many teams come. We've also invited some sort of kind of like Eurovision. We've invited some exterior people from the Euros to potentially come and play as well. So hopefully Australia might come along and play in that, and potentially the US as well, to sort of bolster that tournament. So it's a really exciting time and a really exciting tournament to be a part of, because it's the first one that the IFCPF are doing themselves. Really pumped for it and really excited to see how it all comes together, especially at Loughborough, which is such a world-class venue.
Yeah, and you're going to mention a couple of the other casual roles as well.
So my other volunteer role is at M2 Sped Awareness, which is a charity that looks at autism, ADHD, and lots of others. I could go through. There's about 15 of them that we sort of look at, and I'm one of the sort of board members, I guess, of that charity, one of the trustees, and I'm the trustee of the charity, but my role is in fundraising. So I look after all the fundraising for the charity, and try and find different ways to fundraise, and work with sort of our marketing and comms team to put some stuff out to fundraise. We also go out to different places like universities and businesses and try and fundraise and educate people. We also have a program that goes into schools that works with year 10, 11 and 12s, and they sort of explore these types of things, and then they can present. So there's a girl that might have dyspraxia, and so she sort of speaks on dyspraxia and her experience of dyspraxia, and then can educate people on dyspraxia and maybe some common misconceptions about that. So it's a really cool thing to be a part of, and it's a really rewarding one, and also a really good experience. I've not been a trustee before. I've never had to present to trustees, so to be a trustee at a charity is a really special thing. And then moving into my paid roles, I work casually with the WSL as the operations match manager. So essentially I get put on different matches around the UK within the WSL to oversee from an operational point of view the match and how it runs, and to make sure that it runs to a WSL standard, which a lot of the times, which is the Women's Super League. Sorry.
That's right. I know,
League, which is like the Women's Premier League. Yeah. And so I've worked with some really big clubs: Manchester United, Manchester City, Everton, Tottenham, and then some smaller clubs like Liverpool. And it's been a really good opportunity to sort of get to know the clubs and how they work, but also to get some experience working in some Premier League stadiums as well. My most recent game was the derby between Manchester City and Manchester United, and that was at the Etihad Stadium. And that's just such an impressive stadium to work at. So that's one of them. And then the other one, like I mentioned before, I'm one of the team managers at the English FA for the para teams. So that's the blind men and women, deaf men and women, partially sighted men, the cerebral palsy men, and power chair. And we get put on different camps across the year and different tournaments as well. You can see here, so the one on the left is our Tony Larkin pitch, which is our specifically built pitch for our blind teams. So they play like off the walls, and they will have like a guide that stands behind the goal and sort of shouts when they get close to the goal and can direct them as well. So the pitch is made up into like segments, and so they'll be like, go to A6, and that's this segment, and the players know where to go. And then on the right hand side is the I think it's called the Sir Alf Ramsey indoor pitch, and that's a full sized 3G pitch, and that's usually where our CP teams train when we have camps at St George's Park as well.
St George's, is that St George's Park? Is that in London or is that outside of London?
No, that's like up. It's the town it's in is Burton upon Trent, which is the most UK sounding name. But it's like past Birmingham, like up north.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I get it. And I guess that's in that location because it's more central for people to get to, I suppose, rather than everything being based in London.
It's central, and also there's an expanse of space there. And so they've got like 11 full-size pitches. They've got a Hilton Hotel. They've got all these indoor pitches as well. So it is a kind of central location to the whole of the UK, but also I think it just means that they have so much space and they can continue to build out because they have so much space around them. Like the space around is literally farmland. Literally from where this photo is taken at the Tony Larkin pitch, if you like turn the camera around and face backwards, there's always cows that stood along the fence.
I knew you were going to say cows. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, and because they hear the ball and obviously the shouting and talking, and they all come over, and there's like sometimes like 40 cows just stood up against the fence just watching them play.
Oh man, cool. Now I hear you got some really interesting stories about the partially blind and deaf teams. I made a note when we spoke last, and for the blind players, you were doing some pointing. You were saying over there, or something. Was that right? Or
was this about the goal shooting?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So the guides behind the goal obviously guide them, and they tap on the goal when to show the player where to shoot. So the player can hear where the goal is. And they were doing a penalty shootout, and obviously, like, I play football, and the goals are small, so like I would struggle to score a pen, and I'm fully sighted. And FA, one of the players, stood up to take his pen. And also the goalkeepers are sighted as well. So like the goalkeeper has all like the entire goal. He can see the ball, etc. And the guide said to Eve, "Is like, do you want me to do like corners for you?" He was like, "No, mate, I'll just like chuck it top bins." And we all had a laugh. And then he pings it, and it genuinely hits the apex of the goal, like apex of the corner, and like you couldn't have got more top bins.
Oh my
God! And I
God.
stood there, and I was like, I genuinely, if I tried 100 times, I don't think I'd be able to hit it as well as he did. And he couldn't see the goal and wasn't even guided to the goal. And I think that's why the blind team is probably one of my favorite teams to work with, because it's just so impressive watching them play. Because they have the blindfolds on, they literally cannot see anything. And their spatial awareness, their ball control, and the way they like shoot and play is just an incredible thing to watch.
Wow, yeah, but they also get up to some practical joking, don't they, with the jelly beans and
the partially sighted squad. So one of the coaches of the deaf women's team is Steve Daly, who's obviously revered in terms of his playing time with the partially sighted team, but he always likes to play like some jokes with the partially sighted players, and because he is partially sighted himself, and he likes to get jelly beans and then roll up some blue tack and then try and give it to the partially sighted players to see if they'll take the blue tack, because obviously they can't see. And he thinks it's so hilarious. He will like hack himself up laughing. And the players like love Steve so much. So they have a laugh and to joke around as well. But I think the one thing that I like about working with the para teams is they always take their disabilities so lightly. And I think that it's so great because they always have a laugh and a joke about it. I'll be walking one of the blind team and I'm like, oh, just, he'll be like, where's this room? I'm like, oh, just down there. He's like, you're pointing. And I'm like, I am pointing, and that's not helpful because you can't see me. And they always have a laugh about it and stuff. And I think that's really good. And sometimes I'm like, am I allowed to laugh at that? Because like that was savage. But it's such an inclusive environment. And everyone just has a laugh and a joke at each other's expense, but they know it's all in jest. I think that's a really nice part about being a part of the para teams.
Yeah. It just you rarely hear these stories. I think it's so refreshing. It's just to say, like, the human spirit. They don't take themselves too seriously, and they just enjoy doing what they do. So. And I remember you saying about the bibs as well, and you were asking why do they need bibs?
Yeah. I did ask the question why they need bibs, because they can't see, so it doesn't matter if they can see the teams that they're on, but it's actually for the coaches, and they bib certain positions. So then they can see on pitch what positions are where, and they can follow them a little bit better. But also the players just walk off with the bibs, and we have to chase after them and be like, you've still got your bib on, because obviously they don't notice. So okay. That's why if you ever go to, or you see in this photo here, the players wearing bibs, it's for the coaching staff, not for the players.
Not for the players, no, that's awesome. So you have a English team, don't you? Or do you live near a Premier League ground?
Yeah, so I have. It is controversial, but I have two English teams. I know, crazy. My football team is Manchester United, which is a shame at the moment because they're terrible. And like I said to you before, I got locked into United because I was introduced to United at a very young age. I supported them since I was 3 or 4 years old, and at that time, it was great. We were winning things left, right, and centre. We won the Champions League in 2008. We won a couple more Premier Leagues before 2014s. And it was a great time to be a Manchester United fan. And I was really happy to be a Manchester United fan. And they trapped me. Because then after 2014, besides the Europa League in 2018, and then obviously the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup in the last 2 seasons, it hasn't been a great time being a Manchester United fan. But they are my team, and they're the ones that I'll support regardless of who they play. But my second team, because when I moved to London, I wanted to be able to go to Premier League games often. And obviously Manchester United is in Manchester, and also their tickets are insanely expensive. And from my time working at the G-Tech, I knew a couple of people at Brentford, and they were able to set me up with a membership, and I was able to buy tickets to Brentford. And so Brentford very quickly became my sort of second team in the Premier League and in the UK. And it's just such a great team. They're such a wholesome team, and they're underdogs. So when they perform and they win, it's such a good feeling. When when Manchester United win, you're like, thank God. That was it's been 8 games since a win. Whereas when Brentford win, you're like, oh my God, we won. We actually won. This season we've won a lot of games. But it's always good to sort of support an underdog, and one that you're not necessarily expecting to win, especially when they come up against teams like Manchester City, for example. But when they do win, it's a lot sweeter. And when they lose, you're like, oh well, we lost.
We lost. Yeah.
We're expected to lose, so we'll just come back next week and win. And so they're my 2 teams. I can go further down the leagues, but they're my 2 Premier League teams.
Okay. Do you have any non-league, or further down the league teams at all?
Yeah, so I guess Portsmouth is my sort of championship-ish team because they have a lot of Australians that play for them, and I really like watching them play. I think they're in League 2, although it might be in League 1, is Mansfield Town.
Mansfield Town, yeah.
Because Keanu Bacchus plays at Mansfield Town, and I've seen him play a couple of times here in the UK when he used to play us at Mirren. I went and stayed at his house and spent some time with him, which was great because I know him from Wanderers and then from Football Australia. And now he's playing at Mansfield Town. So whenever it's broadcast, I like to watch the game. But he's been doing quite well, getting assists and goals, which is great. And then my non-league team is the team that I played for when I first moved here to the UK, which is Sporting Bengal. They're in the Isthmian Premier League, which is step 4, I think, although I could be corrected. It could be step 5. But I played for their reserve team in step 6 and trained with their first team for a while. And yeah, they're my non-league team. But we may get relegated this year back down to the counties, Essex Counties League, whatever it's called, which would suck because we've done 2 back-to-back promotions. But the Isthmian Premier League is it's a lot of games and the teams are difficult teams. So if we can stay up, it'd be great. But yeah, they're my non-league to legend team.
Yes, yeah, I think it's always good to have a non-league team because going back to grassroots football and stuff, and really supporting, how it all began, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're almost at the end. Just wanted to ask you about the pitch at the GTEC.
Yeah, the pitch of the GTEC.
Yeah,
I
don't know the answer. So this is.
I left a divot in the pitch at the GTEC. This is skipping ahead, but I left a divot because I played on the GTEC because the University of West London Students' Union is a major sponsor or the University of West London is a major sponsor of Brentford Football Club, and so each year they played a game which was staff v students on the GTEC, which was sick. So this year I was lucky enough to play in goal at the GTEC, and literally 30 seconds in I had a shot and I was way out of position because I was just trying to take in the GTEC, and then I've shot. I'm like, damn it, I run back and dived and saved it, but then made this a massive divot in the ground. I was trying to cover it up. But the story from the GTEC pitch comes from when I was here at the Socceroos game when we versed New Zealand, and I actually used an interview because my new job, I'm working under Jess Morris, who I almost had a fight with in this story. So it's a full circle, and I actually used it in the interview when she asked, "Have you dealt with difficult stakeholders?" And I said, you're a difficult stakeholder. And essentially I got to match day -1 of Australia versus New Zealand at the GTEC, and the goals weren't put up and the pitch hadn't been marked. And I was like, we're supposed to have a match day -1 training session at 4 p.m. I think it was for the Australian team. And I was like, hey, Jess, just wondering, when will the pitch be marked and when will the goals be put out? And she's like, oh, it's not. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, well, for your training, you're only using box to box. And I was like, no, we always use the full pitch because we have to for our training. She's like, no, you're only using between box to box. It's in the contract. I was like, you sure? Surely we wouldn't have agreed to that. And if we had agreed to it, I would have been told. And so we went and checked the contract, and the contract actually stated that we could use the full pitch. And she looked at me and graciously was like, just a reminder, Sam, of all the stuff that we've done that it also isn't in the contract, that if you pull the contract on us, we will have to pull the contract on you. And I think it was a good lesson for me in sort of event management where, being able to sort of work with someone and try and make things work without having to pull a contract. If you have to pull out a contract, things have gone wrong. And relationships are broken down because you shouldn't ever have to refer to the contract. Obviously, you have to get the contractual things and, X amount of signage and, this and that, etc. But you shouldn't have to go back on match day -1 and pull out a contract and be like, this is what it says. And so I had to make sort of the difficult decision to enforce the contract and make us play box to box and sort of ruin that relationship with Brentford and with Jess, and probably not be able to come back to Brentford again with a Football Australia game, or try and negotiate with our team management and sort of get a win for both sides. And so I rang Joel Freem, who was our team manager after James Zasewski, and I essentially was like, Joel, you're going to hate me, but you can only use box to box. And he was like, can't do that. That's unacceptable. I said, look, that's what I'm telling you now. this is what the like situation is. When you come here, let's have a chat and try and negotiate and at least get, some usage of the boxes between X, Y, and Z. But I was like, for now, I'm just warning you, when you get here, this is the situation. And then when they got there, I had Joel, and I had the groundsman, and I had Alan, who was Jess's boss, and Jess. And I essentially was like, guys, we need to come up with a solution. And obviously theirs was the extreme of box to box, and Joel's was the extreme of the entire pitch. And I was kind of having to be the mediator to be like, guys, what about 6 yard to 6 yard? How does that sound? Or like, what about one box? Is there a box that's better? And we can just use one box. Or like, let's just use the box for like 10 minutes. Can we just use it for 10 minutes? Is that enough? To try and come up with some solutions. And eventually I was able to negotiate to be able to use the boxes for a limited amount of time, but not for the whole training session. And I think it was a good lesson for me to, when it came down to the decision, to communicate better what our actual requirements were, because the groundsmen were like, no, you can't use the 18-yard boxes, because they thought we were going to be doing other things than what we actually were going to be doing. So they thought we were going to be like running across the pitch and like digging it up. And it was like, actually, it's just the goalkeeper, and he might make 2 saves in the training session. So it's actually like no wear and tear on the pitch at all. And once we'd communicated that and was like, actually, this is what it looks like, they were a lot more open to it and were able to negotiate a little bit better. So I think for me, obviously, it was a very stressful time, but I learned, I guess, two things. It's important for stakeholder management, and maintaining relationships with people is really important. And from a Football Australia point of view, our goal was to continue a good relationship with Brentford Football Club, and to be able to come back to them again if we wanted to run a match here. And I think we're able to achieve that by, mediating between the two. And then also the other thing I learned was just a little bit better communication before matchday -1, to be like, do we have the pitch? And then we can sort it before that, so we don't even come to matchday -1 and have an issue. And then better communication on the day to be like, this is what our actual requirements are, because it might actually make it better. But yeah, that's the story of the pitch. And then obviously I played on it, I left a divot, and I was like, I've ruined the pitch. And I was like trying to fix it before the groundsman saw it. And I went after the game, I went to the groundsman, I was like, I'm so sorry, I've like done a massive divot. He's like, no, but we're going to rip the pitch up in like 2 weeks anyway. I was like, oh, doesn't matter anymore. And also I still have a great working relationship with Jess, which is good, because now she will be my boss in about 3 weeks' time. So
yay, tell us about it. Come on. This is the new role.
Yeah, the big reveal, because it hasn't actually been posted about on LinkedIn yet either. On the 24th of March, I'll be starting as the venue manager at Twickenham for the Rugby Women's World Cup. So excited to work there. I'm not a big rugby head, so I guess the passion is not for the rugby side of things. I think the passion is more about the tournament and women's sport in general. I think it's such an insane tournament to be a part of, and such an historic tournament to be a part of. Again, they're taking it internal this year. There's not a LOC as such, as you would normally see for sort of worldwide tournaments like a FIFA World Cup. And they're going to set a record for attendance, hopefully at Twickenham for the final. And it's just going to be a great spectacle for women's sport. And I think similar to the Women's World Cup in football at home and the Euros here in the UK, like the Women's Euros here in the UK a couple of years ago, I think it's going to be one that's a tournament that sort of brings the nation together, and to be able to have a part in that, and to be able to leave a legacy that, like, I was the venue manager at Twickenham and we set that record, and when we had that game, and when the Women's World Cup was the most successful Women's World Cup, I think that's such an exciting point for me. And I think that was a selling point for me, was being able to leave a legacy. And because this is the first tournament that World Rugby are doing themselves, I'm the first venue manager to do this from a World Rugby point of view. So whether I can leave a lot bigger legacy than if I was just coming in, it was the same tournament, they've done it before previously, and we're just going to copy and paste. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that coupled with the platform that women's sport will have during the tournament, I think they're the two most exciting parts of this role for me. So, yeah, I cannot wait. I literally logged into my emails today. I don't start for another 3 weeks, but I was like, I just want to like be a part of it because I'm just so keen to join.
Sure. When's the tournament taking place?
So there's only one match day at Twickenham. The tournament takes place I think it starts in September. I might be wrong. It might start late August, but it's during September. And then my match is on the 27th of September. And I've got the bronze medal match and the gold medal match at Twickenham, which will be, hopefully a sellout, depending if England, hopefully it's an England-Australia final. That would be perfect.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
We'll see.
Yeah, and that stadium is so impressive. I was thinking, I was telling you before, I used to have a friend that he probably still lives there at Whitton, which is just down the road from Twickenham, and you could drive past that stadium. I think just rises out of the ground. I mean, all stadiums do, but this one has a particular aura about it because Twickenham is like the spiritual home of rugby, and it's like in terms of stadiums anyway, and it's just amazing.
Don't tell anyone, but I have never been to Twickenham before, and I actually said this in the job interview as well. But I've never been big into rugby, and it's a big change for me in terms of sport. But I think it's also good because sometimes I feel like I'm niching myself into football a bit, and I've only worked in football, and I know so much about football. I know football, back to front, but to be able to go to a different sport and learn how they do it and see what the things they do differently, I think is also a really good sort of learning point for me in my career. And I think it's going to be a really good learning experience to see Twickenham and the way that a rugby stadium works compared to a football stadium. And obviously there's going to be a lot of, similarities, but there's going to be a lot of differences as well. And even with the crowd, the crowd might be, demographic is a lot different in, men's football compared to men's rugby. And it's a lot different in women's football to women's rugby. So being able to, cater for that and make sure that you have the right things for that as well is, another big challenge. And, but I think one that I'm so excited to get my hands on.
No, congratulations, actually, by the way. I haven't said that yet.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Brilliant. So I guess my last question to you is have you got any ambitions to work for UEFA or FIFA one day?
Yeah, I think being the football person that I am, I always have ambitions to work at UEFA and FIFA and the Olympics as well. I think you can add into that. The end of my 10-year goal is to be working at the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. And I think this role at Twickenham is a really good example of a role that will get me closer to that. And that's sort of like the end of my 10-year plan, which means I need to figure out another 10-year plan after that. Right. But I've always got ambitions to work at UEFA, FIFA, Olympics, that kind of stuff. And I think if the opportunity arose, I would take it with both hands. But it's also very difficult to work at UEFA and FIFA because in Switzerland, and especially for me being on an Australian visa, it's quite difficult to get a work permit there. But other people have done it. Ben O'Neill, who is a good friend of mine, and I used to work with at Football Australia, now works at FIFA as in their comms and media team as well. So it can be done, and I'd love to do it at some point. But hopefully this role at at the Women's World Cup will hopefully sort of get my trajectory in that way.
In that direction. Awesome. Well, I'm really grateful for your time. I know it's late in the UK now, so
okay.
I just wanted to thank you. And also, is there anything else you'd like to say before we conclude this podcast?
No, I don't think so. I think I've covered all of my life pretty much. But I just want to say thank you as well for having me on. I really appreciate it. I always like talking about events and football and stuff. So it's always a pleasure to come on and chat. So thank you so much for having me on as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And enjoy the next 3 weeks before the lead up. I bet you can't wait to start. So
I'll be counting down the days.
That's it. All right. Thanks for taking part. Cheers.
No, Nick, see ya.